The silver tray slipped in my hands as my mother's voice cut through the dining room. "Bianca, dear, why don't you serve everyone? You're already standing." My spine straightened like I'd been shocked. 20 pairs of eyes swiveled toward me. My sister Victoria's friends from her law firm, my Aunt Felicia's country club crowd, all dressed in evening wear worth more than my car. I wasn't standing to serve. I'd risen to announce my promotion to creative director, the news I'd been bursting to share all evening. The fork I'd been tapping against my water glass froze mid-air. Victoria's smirk blossomed slowly as she leaned back, wine glass dangling between manicured fingers. "Yes, Bianca, do serve us. You've always been so practical." Her emphasis turned the word into an insult, and the table rippled with polite laughter. My mother pushed back her chair and thrust the heavy silver tray at me, loaded with steaming dishes she'd ordered catered. "Since you're not contributing much else to this celebration," she whispered, just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. My husband Dominic's hand found mine under the table, his thumb pressing against my palm, our silent signal. His eyes met mine, and I saw something dangerous flare in them. "My name is Bianca, I'm 32, and I'm a digital designer. This is the story of how I reclaimed my voice when my family tried to silence it. I'd spent a lifetime being the family workhorse while Victoria collected the accolades. Tonight was supposed to be different. I'd rehearsed my announcement in the car, practiced the confident smile I'd wear when I told them about the promotion that came with a corner office and a team of 15. For once, they couldn't dismiss me. But as I stood there, my mother's perfectly timed interruption made everything clear. They'd never let me outshine Victoria. Not in this house, not in this family. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I stood to make an announcement." I gently placed the tray back on the sideboard, the china rattling slightly. Aunt Felicia clicked her tongue. "Announcements after dinner, dear. Protocol." She snapped her fingers. "The duck is getting cold." Dominic stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Bianca was promoted to creative director today," he announced, his voice filling the room. "She beat out 17 other candidates. The CEO personally called to congratulate her." The table fell silent. I watched Victoria's smile falter, recalibrating. My mother recovered first. "That's nice, dear. Now about dinner." "It's more than nice," I said, finding my voice. "It's the position Victoria told me I'd never qualify for last Christmas." The words escaped before I could stop them. Victoria's face hardened. "I was being realistic, Bianca. Not everyone is cut out for leadership." Her tone was sweet poison. I felt something crack inside me, not breaking, but opening. Years of swallowed words rushed up like floodwater. "I've spent my entire life being realistic for this family," I said. "I've planned your parties, edited your speeches, designed your wedding invitations. All while you told me I wasn't good enough." My voice didn't waver. "Tonight, I wanted to celebrate with my family, but I see now that was unrealistic of me." Dominic's hand found the small of my back. "Let's go," he said quietly. Victoria laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Dramatic as always. Sit down, both of you. You're embarrassing yourselves." But we didn't sit. For the first time in my life, I walked away from their table, their judgments, their carefully constructed hierarchy. Dominic's hand in mine, we moved through that silent dining room, past the expensive floral arrangements I'd stayed up late to perfect, past the place cards I'd hand-lettered. Outside, the December air hit my face like freedom. I gulped it down, my chest heaving. "You did it," Dominic said, his voice proud and fierce. "Did what?" I asked, trembling now that we were alone. "Stopped serving them." My phone lit up immediately. Victoria. "Mom is livid. Fix this now, my mother. After everything we've done for you. Disgraceful behavior. Aunt Felicia. Always knew you were the difficult one. Poor Victoria is humiliated. I hadn't blocked their numbers despite our frequent arguments. Part of me had always hoped for genuine connection instead of criticism. I turned off my phone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Victoria's smirk, heard my mother's dismissal. But for once, these images didn't crush me. They fueled me. They'll call tomorrow, Dominic said, stroking my hair. They always do. And they'll expect you to apologize. I know, I whispered, but you won't. It wasn't a question. For the first time, it wasn't even a struggle. No, I said. I won't. 3 days of silence followed. No calls, no texts. Then an email from Victoria to the address on my professional website. Family dinner, Thursday, 7 p.m., Morton's Steakhouse. Mom says your attendance is non-negotiable. Dominic read it over my shoulder. Are you going? I considered for a long moment. Yes, but not to apologize. Thursday evening, we arrived at Morton's precisely at 7 p.m. Victoria was in her territory, where she took clients, where the staff knew her name. I wore my new blazer, the one with the sharp shoulders that made me feel armored. Dominic wore the watch I'd given him when I got my promotion. They'd chosen a table in the center of the restaurant. Victoria, my mother, and Aunt Felicia sat like a tribunal, backs to the wall, facing the entrance. They saw us the moment we walked in. You're late, my mother said as we approached. No, I replied, checking my watch. We're exactly on time. Aunt Felicia sighed dramatically. Let's not start with attitude, Bianca. We're here to sort things out like adults. Dominic pulled out my chair, his hand lingering on my shoulder before he sat beside me. Under the table, his ankle rested against mine. Victoria didn't waste time. Your behavior was embarrassing and childish. You owe us an apology. I took a slow sip of water, then set the glass down carefully. I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to establish new boundaries. My mother's eyebrows shot up. Boundaries? With family? Don't be ridiculous. That's exactly the problem, I said. You don't see me as someone deserving of respect. You see me as an extension of yourselves, useful when you need something, invisible when you don't. Victoria leaned forward. Oh, please. You're not some victim, Bianca. We've supported you through every middling achievement. Middling. I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air. That's what you called my scholarship to RISD and my first art showing. And my wedding. I felt Dominic tense beside me. Nothing I do will ever be enough for you, will it? My mother's face flushed. We've always wanted what's best for you. No, I cut in. You've always wanted what's best for Victoria. I was the backup, the support system, the one who makes everyone else look good. Aunt Felicia's lips thinned to a line. This is preposterous. After everything your mother has sacrificed, I'm grateful for what you've given me, I said evenly, but I'm not grateful for what you've taken. My confidence, my voice, my right to celebrate my own successes. Victoria scoffed. Always so melodramatic. Creative director isn't exactly changing the world. Dominic spoke for the first time. It changed hers. His voice was quiet but firm, and that should matter to people who claim to love her. The waiter approached, sensing tension. Are you ready to order? We won't be staying, I said, placing my napkin on the table. I didn't come for dinner. I came to say this. I'm done serving you. I'm done shrinking. I'm done apologizing for taking up space. I stood, smoothing my blazer. I still want a relationship with you, but it has to be built on mutual respect, not on my subordination. My mother's face crumpled in disbelief. You can't just... I can, I said, and I am. Dominic stood beside me, steady and solid. Victoria's composure finally cracked. If you walk away now, don't expect things to go back to normal. I smiled genuinely. That's the point. Normal wasn't working for me. We walked out of Morton's together, past tables of strangers who had no idea they'd just witnessed my liberation. Outside, the city lights blurred through unexpected tears. You okay? Dominic asked softly. I nodded. Better than okay. Back home, the weeks that followed were strangely quiet. My phone didn't buzz with demands from Victoria or guilt trips from my mother. At work, I settled into my new role, building my team, making the changes I'd always envisioned. At home, I started painting again, something I'd abandoned years ago when Victoria had called my work derivative at a family gathering. Dominic found me in our spare room one evening, surrounded by canvases. "You look different," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Different how?" "Like someone who stopped waiting for permission to exist." 3 months passed. My team launched a campaign that doubled our clients' engagement metrics. My boss mentioned expansion, new offices, bigger budgets. I started leading workshops on digital design at the local arts center. Dominic and I grew even closer, our relationship stronger now that I wasn't constantly drained by family drama. And still, silence from my family. Until the email arrived, an invitation to Victoria's firm's charity gala. My name was on it, not and guest, but Bianca Reynolds, creative director. Victoria must have heard about my promotion through our cousin who followed me on LinkedIn. The family grapevine never truly went silent. "Are you going?" Dominic asked when I showed him. I considered it carefully. Yes, but not as Victoria's sister, as myself. 2 weeks after receiving the invitation, we arrived at the Westin Ballroom. The space was transformed. Ice sculptures, floating candles, string quartet. Victoria stood near the entrance with my mother and Aunt Felicia, greeting guests. Her eyes widened slightly when she spotted us. "Bianca," she said, her voice carefully modulated, "you came." "I was invited," I replied simply. My mother stepped forward awkwardly. "You look, well." "I am well," I said. "Better than I've been in a long time." Aunt Felicia glanced at my simple black dress. "You could have made more of an effort for Victoria's event." Dominic's hand tightened on mine, but I just smiled. "Actually, I designed this dress myself." The fashion editor from the Tribune just asked where she could get one. She'd approached me minutes earlier, having recognized me from the design workshop I'd led at her office last month. Victoria's eyes narrowed, recalculating. "You're designing clothes now?" "Among other things," I said. "My team just won the Hermes Award for our digital campaign." Recognition flickered across her face. "That was your work?" "It's been in all the industry journals." For the first time in my life, I saw something new in Victoria's expression. Respect, however reluctant. My mother cleared her throat. "Well, perhaps you should tell us about it. Over lunch, this weekend." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an acknowledgement of what had happened. But it was something. A crack in their perfect facade, a door left slightly ajar. "I'm free Sunday," I said, "but I should warn you. I don't serve lunch anymore." Victoria almost smiled. Noted. Later, as Dominic and I moved through the crowded ballroom, he squeezed my hand. "So that's it? Peace treaty signed?" I shook my head. "Not exactly. But maybe a new beginning. On my terms this time." The quartet began a new song, something light and hopeful. Dominic led me to the dance floor, his arms encircling me. "You know what the real victory is, right?" he murmured against my hair. "What? You didn't need their approval to feel complete. You already were." I rested my head against his shoulder, letting the music carry us. He was right. The real revenge wasn't making them see my worth. It was seeing it myself. And that was something they could never take away again. I did attend that Sunday lunch, setting another boundary when my mother tried to criticize my career choices. Our relationship is still evolving, some days better than others, but now it exists a more equal footing. Dominic and I celebrated our anniversary the following month, stronger together than ever before. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The hammer connected with my fingers. Crack. A sound no human hand should make. Time slowed as purple bruising spread like lightning under my skin. Dad leaned closer, his aftershave mixing with the scent of medium-rare steak from the dining room. "Ask that again." "I dare you," he whispered, dropping the rusted hammer back into the junk drawer like it was nothing more than a spoon. Behind him, my sister Vanessa continued chewing her cornbread, eyes briefly meeting mine before returning to her plate. Steak that melted off the bone, garlic asparagus, cornbread muffins. On my plate, a single piece of bread with a smear of mayo. My mother stirred something at the stove, her back deliberately turned as I collapsed to the floor, cradling fingers that bent in directions fingers shouldn't bend. The most terrifying part wasn't the pain shooting up my arm or my fingers swelling to twice their size. It was the silence. No one gasped. No one called for help. No one seemed surprised. My name is Paula. I'm 25 and a sound engineer. This is the story of how I rebuilt my life using the same hands they tried to break. I was 13 that night, just back from the school library where I'd stayed late because home never felt safe. The air in our house always carried weight, like walking across a floor you knew might collapse any second. That evening, I'd smelled the steak before I even opened the door, my stomach growling loudly enough to embarrass me. I'd stepped into the kitchen, seen my pathetic dinner already waiting, and finally broken my silence. "Where's the rest?" I'd asked, too exhausted to pretend anymore. Dad had been standing near the sink. He didn't like being questioned. Ever. He'd turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "You asking that with your tone?" I'd blinked back tears. "It's not fair. Why does Vanessa get steak and I get this?" That's when Vanessa had giggled from the dining room. Maybe because I don't look like a drowned rat. No hospital visit followed the hammer. No apology. No punishment for my father. That night, they locked me in the basement with an old ice pack and a wet rag. My fingers throbbed, mangled and crooked, wrapped in a dish towel that reeked of bleach. I spent hours shaking, whispering to myself to stay alive, not out of fear, but out of fury. My fingers healed wrong. No doctor ever examined them. They've never bent straight since. And Vanessa, she bragged about how tough love makes weak things stronger. But they didn't understand what that night had done. Pain like that rewires you. It turns every scar into a blueprint. They thought they'd break me and I'd disappear. Instead, I watched. I stayed silent. I let them forget me. And that was their first mistake, because I started paying attention. Dad had a routine. He left the house every Sunday night at 6:30 sharp, claiming it was church board business, but never returned smelling like hymns. Mom had her own secrets, like sneaking into the school office after hours. She worked there part-time, and rifling through donation funds. I discovered this one evening when I had to drop off a forgotten permission slip and saw her through the office window, counting bills from an envelope marked Field Trip Fund. Vanessa was their darling, but she had more enemies than friends. She wasn't smart, just loud. Not talented, just privileged. And me? I was the invisible shadow. But shadows learn how light works. By 16, I had read more than most adults ever will. I volunteered at the school theater to avoid home, learned stage lighting, set design, even how to run cables and speakers. I took notes about everything. I started working at an animal shelter on Saturdays, where I met Catherine. Catherine was in her 60s and ran the shelter like a military base, but had eyes that knew too much. One afternoon, she saw my hand trembling as I picked up a dish bin. "What happened to your fingers?" she asked gently. I opened my mouth, closed it, then shrugged. "Family recipe," I muttered. She didn't push, but 2 weeks later, she handed me a folder containing state documentation, emancipation paperwork, housing referrals, and 3 numbers to call if I ever needed a place to go. "You didn't ask," she said, "but I see everything." I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I folded the papers and tucked them into my backpack. I wasn't ready yet, but soon I would be. Because revenge wasn't a sudden explosion. It was slow, careful, silent, and it would come not with a scream, but with a smile. I stayed 2 more years in that house, even after the hammer, even after the splintered fingers, the locked basement, and the nights I slept with one eye open while Vanessa paraded around like a pageant queen. Because I was planning every second, every step. It started quietly. Catherine got me a spot volunteering at the local radio station. "She's good with wires," she told the manager. And just like that, I was behind the board on weekends, adjusting faders, testing mics, learning how sound worked, how voices could be amplified, how silence could be recorded. I didn't just learn how to mix. I learned how to listen. My dad's lies were always the same: church board, late meetings, work calls. But I knew where he actually went: the truck yard on Old Harrison Road. I once followed him on foot for over an hour just to confirm it, catching the last bus back home before they'd notice I was gone. There, he met with men in expensive boots, talked in hushed tones, and loaded boxes into the back of unmarked vans. But I wasn't interested in his deals. I was interested in what he feared, and that turned out to be reputation. He was running for deacon at his church, all smiles and fake prayers, shaking hands like he hadn't used them to harm mine. Vanessa was filming cutesy social videos about family values and dinner nights with Daddy, and my mom was now PTA president stealing funds from field trip envelopes. They were building a legacy of lies, and I would burn it with something better than fire: truth. One night, while they were at one of their family dinners at Applebee's, which never included me, I set up a cheap audio surveillance device in the living room, a recycled mic pack from the radio station manager who let me borrow it for what I told him was a school project. I hid it under the old recliner. It ran on a timer and uploaded automatically to an encrypted drive. For weeks, I gathered audio: Vanessa mocking classmates, Mom saying, "We'll just skim the bake sale money again. No one ever checks." Dad laughing about scaring someone at work so bad they wet themselves. And then the moment I waited for, Dad saying, "That girl Paula, she's nothing, barely human. I should have broken her jaw when she started talking back." He was drunk, slurred, proud. I clipped the file, made a copy, and then I waited. Graduation came. Vanessa got a new car. I got nothing, not even a handshake. But I didn't care because I was almost free. That night, I packed my things and taped a note to the fridge. "You broke me, but not forever. Keep the toast. I've got a bigger table now. Paula." I walked out at midnight, the house asleep, carrying only a backpack and a thumb drive. Catherine met me at the shelter. I'd called her earlier that day to let her know my plan was in motion. She'd already set up a cot and a small job cleaning kennels. I felt lighter that night than I ever had, but I wasn't done. The thumb drive didn't go to the cops. It went to the school board, the church elders, and the PTA. 3 envelopes, 3 sets of carefully timed detonations. I'd collected their addresses months before from the school directory where my mother worked, and from the church bulletin board that listed all the elders' contact information. One contained Vanessa's full video archive, including her faking charity work for views. One included recordings of my mother joking about misusing field trip money for personal treats and mocking poor kids with lunch debt. And the final envelope, the crown jewel, had my father's confession. "That girl Paula, she's nothing, barely human. I should have broken her jaw when she started talking back." The same day those letters hit desks, I uploaded a podcast. Just one episode, just my voice, titled "The Leftover Daughter." I told the truth, every inch of it. No names, no slander, just my story wrapped in calm narration, scored gently with background music from the radio station. I published it through the station's platform where I volunteered, with permission from my manager, who had no idea it was about my own family. It wasn't rage, it was peace. By sunset, the episode had 2,000 downloads, then 10,000. Then it went viral thanks to someone who clipped the line. "When you harm a child's hands, you teach her how to type her own truth." That line became a trend. Within a week, my family was on fire. Not literally, but socially. Vanessa's sponsors dropped her. Mom was asked to step down from the PTA. And Dad? The church voted to remove him from the board. He didn't know where it came from. He blamed internet haters. He had no idea it was me because I never used my full name. I didn't need to. The truth carried its own thunder. And I wasn't finished yet because one thing still remained. The house. The one I'd grown up in, where I was locked in the basement, where my bones were injured, where silence was currency and pain was furniture. I had one last thing to do. 6 months after I left home, I was scrolling through local real estate listings that I checked weekly out of habit. It was a Tuesday when I saw the listing go up. 4-bedroom fixer-upper. Owner looking for immediate offload. Offers welcome. The address, my old house. Turns out, after Dad lost his church title and Vanessa's influencer revenue dried up, things got tight. They stopped paying the mortgage. Then came the letters, then the auction notice. I watched it all happen silently. The house where I grew up, the one where I scrubbed blood from the floor with my left hand while the right was still broken, was now $18,000 behind on payments and begging for a buyer. So I called in a favor. Catherine's cousin worked at a nonprofit that helps transition youth buy their first homes through a grant matching program. She'd mentioned it during one of our shelter dinners 3 months earlier. They were looking for someone reliable, someone with a clear goal, someone who had been through fire and knew how to build from ashes. I sent them my podcast episode, just that. They approved me in less than 48 hours. A week later, I walked up to that rotting front porch, clipboard in hand, new hoodie zipped tight, and signed the purchase agreement. The real estate agent had no idea of my connection to the house until I gave my last name. They didn't even know it was me until I moved in. I waited until closing day, which I knew about because my real estate agent called to confirm the time. The front lawn was scattered with boxes, Vanessa crying on the phone, Dad screaming at someone about how, "This is all fake," and "We're being targeted." I walked right past them with a key in hand. Vanessa froze. What are you doing here?" Dad looked up, eyes bloodshot, mouth open. I turned to them both and smiled a calm, dangerous smile. "I told you I'd get a bigger table." Then I stepped inside. The silence was delicious. They stood there, stunned as the door closed. That night, I didn't dance or scream or blast music. I unpacked one thing only, a brand new dining table, real wood, paid for with my radio station earnings that I'd saved for months. And on it, I placed 3 things: a recording device, my broken hand x-ray from 2 years ago that Catherine had finally convinced me to get at a free clinic, and a nameplate that read, "Paula Greenwood, survivor, not servant." I didn't need to destroy them publicly. They were already eating themselves alive, but I made sure one last message landed. 3 days after I moved in, I hosted my first dinner. Not family, friends, real ones. Other girls from the shelter, from the radio station, even Catherine. And on each plate, a single seared steak. Vanessa used to say I didn't deserve steak. Dad used to eat mine and call it father's tax. But that night, I fed everyone the meal I was never allowed. When I passed the final plate to Catherine, she looked at me and asked, "What made you come back here?" I just smiled. "This place used to be a prison," I said, but I turned the locks around. As laughter filled the kitchen, I stepped into the hallway and stared at my reflection in the same cracked mirror where my father once called me useless. My fingers still didn't bend right. One knuckle sat a little too high, but they worked. They built this life. They typed my truth. And when I reached up and traced that scar across my hand, I didn't feel rage. I felt power, because they thought they broke me. But all they did was give me something to rebuild from. And when someone rebuilds from rubble, they don't come back seeking revenge. They come back owning everything that tried to bury them. As for my family, they moved in with my mother's sister in the next county over. I heard through former classmates that my father had lost his job at the trucking company after the church scandal. My mother now works as a cashier at the grocery store. Vanessa deleted all her social media accounts and rarely leaves the house. We haven't spoken since closing day, and honestly, I prefer it that way. The only family I need now is the one I've chosen. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The letter slipped from between my fingers, landing on the polished oak of the lawyer's desk as the words swam before my eyes. You are not adopted. 4 words that shattered 21 years of lies. My vision tunneled on those words as my heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out the gentle whir of the office air conditioning. Heat crawled up my neck while ice formed in my stomach. "Ms. Yardley?" The lawyer's voice seemed to come from miles away. "Do you need a moment?" I couldn't speak. The private investigator's photos spread across the desk told the story my family had hidden from me. Me walking to my night shifts, eating ramen in my cramped apartment, counting coins for bus fare, all while my father and stepmother drove new vehicles, renovated their home, and bought boats with money they expected to inherit, money that was now mine. The inheritance wasn't just the $2 million. It wasn't just the house. It was the truth, devastating and liberating all at once. My name is Olivia. I'm 21, and I work at an auto parts store. This is the story of how I reclaimed both my identity and my birthright. For as long as I could remember, I'd been the family outsider. My father, David, and stepmother, Rachel, told me I was adopted when I was 7, in the casual way you might mention the weather. "That's why you don't look like us," Rachel had explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "We took you in because it was the right thing to do." It explained so much. Why my brother and sister got birthday parties while I got practical gifts like socks. Why family vacations sometimes happened while I stayed with friends. Why the family photos on the mantle rarely included me. I was the charity case, the good deed, the burden they reminded me they were carrying whenever I asked for anything. I learned to expect nothing. When Logan got a car at 16, I got bus passes. When Vanessa had her college tuition paid in full, I worked nights to afford community college classes. "Figure it out," became my father's mantra whenever I needed help. That's what adults do. So I did. I figured out how to survive on minimum wage. I figured out how to pass classes despite exhaustion. I figured out how to silence the voice that wondered what I'd done to deserve a family that merely tolerated me. I never figured out why my grandmother Eleanor wasn't allowed to see me. "She's not really your grandmother," Rachel would say whenever Eleanor called. "She doesn't need to be bothered with you." The last time I saw Eleanor, I was 15. She'd hugged me fiercely at a family gathering, slipping me an envelope before Rachel pulled me away. "Never forget you're loved," she'd whispered. Rachel confiscated the envelope before I could open it. "Probably just trying to buy your affection," she'd said dismissively. Now, 6 years later, I understood everything. The lawyer, Margaret Peller, handed me another document. "Your grandmother documented every attempt she made to contact you," she explained. "Every call your stepmother blocked, every visit your father canceled, every gift returned unopened." I scanned the pages, each rejection like a knife. "Why would they do this?" Margaret adjusted her glasses. "According to your grandmother, your stepmother wanted your father to give you up for adoption when they married. She wanted to erase Jennifer, your biological mother, completely." My real mother's name hit me like a physical blow. Jennifer. I'd never been told her name. "Eleanor threatened legal action to prevent them from giving you up," Margaret continued. "She fought for you, but once you were in their custody, they could control access. They used that power to systematically cut her out of your life." "And my mother? What happened to her?" "Car accident when you were 2. Your father remarried Rachel 6 months later." The timeline landed like a revelation. I wasn't the unwanted adopted child. I was the unwanted reminder of my father's first marriage. "There's something else," Margaret said, sliding another folder across the desk. "Your grandmother was quite strategic. She deliberately led your family to believe they would inherit everything." I opened the folder to find loan documents, credit card statements, and purchase receipts. My father's $65,000 truck. Rachel's $40,000 kitchen renovation, Logan's boat, Vanessa's car. "They've spent approximately $200,000 anticipating an inheritance that isn't coming," Margaret said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Your grandmother's exact words were, 'Let them dig their own graves.'" I stared at the evidence of their greed. What exactly did they inherit? "Your siblings received $5,000 each. Your father and Rachel received nothing." The implications sank in slowly. My family was in financial free fall, and they didn't even know it yet. "Your grandmother had one final request," Margaret said. "She wanted me present when you informed them about the inheritance. She wanted a witness to their reaction." "How did you find me?" I asked, suddenly realizing I'd never contacted a lawyer about Eleanor's will. Margaret smiled gently. Your grandmother maintained your current address through the years. She received updates from the community college you attended and had her private investigator confirm your apartment location. When she passed away 3 weeks ago, I was instructed to contact you immediately. 24 hours later, I was standing on my family's porch, Margaret beside me, a $2.1 million check in my pocket. The familiar knot of anxiety formed in my stomach as Rachel opened the door, her smile faltering when she saw me. Olivia? What are you doing here? Her eyes darted to Margaret, confusion evident. We need to talk about Grandmother Eleanor's will, I said. Her expression shifted instantly, calculation replacing confusion. Of course. Come in. The house had been renovated since I'd last visited. New furniture, expensive art, a kitchen straight from a magazine. My father sat watching TV while Logan and Vanessa lounged nearby, scrolling through their phones. All the comforts that had never been extended to me. David, Rachel called. Olivia's here about Eleanor's will. My father looked up, his expression freezing when he noticed Margaret. Who's this? Margaret Peller, she said, extending her hand. I was Eleanor Yardley's attorney. The effect was immediate. Logan put down his phone. Vanessa looked up from Instagram. Rachel smoothed her hair nervously. Well, my father said with a forced smile, I guess it's time to sort out Mom's affairs. Actually, Margaret replied coolly, I'm here for Olivia. The silence was absolute. I don't understand, Rachel said slowly. Margaret opened her briefcase. I'm here to witness Olivia's notification of her inheritance. Her inheritance? My father's voice cracked. There must be some mistake. She's adopted, Rachel interjected quickly. Eleanor wasn't her real grandmother. She had no obligation to leave her anything. Margaret turned to me. Olivia, would you like to tell them what you learned yesterday? Or shall I? I rose to my feet, pulling out Eleanor's letter. The moment felt surreal. Years of suppressed anger and hurt, crystallizing into perfect clarity. I learned that I'm not adopted, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I learned that Jennifer Yardley was my mother, and she died when I was 2. I learned that Rachel convinced my father to give me up for adoption, and the only reason they didn't was because Grandmother Eleanor threatened to fight for custody. Rachel's face drained of color. Logan and Vanessa exchanged confused glances. That's not true, Rachel stammered. That's impossible. I also learned, I continued, that Grandmother Eleanor left me her entire estate, the house, the investments, and $2.1 million in cash. The silence that followed seemed to have physical weight. That can't be right, my father finally said, his voice hollow. She promised us. She said the estate would be divided equally. She lied, I replied simply, just like you lied to me for 21 years. Vanessa found her voice first. Wait, what about us? What do we get? Margaret consulted her papers. You and Logan each received $5,000. $5,000? Logan exploded. That's it? What about the house? What about all her money? It all goes to Olivia, Margaret stated calmly. Rachel stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We'll contest the will. Olivia has no right to any of this money. We're the ones who took care of Eleanor, who visited her, who helped her when she was sick. Actually, Margaret countered, Mrs. Yardley documented extensively that you prevented Olivia from visiting her. She also documented that your visits usually involved asking for money. Rachel's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. You can contest the will if you like, Margaret continued, but I should warn you that Mrs. Yardley anticipated that possibility. The will is ironclad, witnessed by multiple parties, and she was evaluated by 2 separate psychiatrists who confirmed her mental competency. A contest would be expensive and futile. My father slumped in his chair, defeat etched in every line of his face. Olivia, you have to understand, we never meant for things to go this way. Didn't you? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you got exactly what you wanted. You got rid of the inconvenient reminder of your first wife. You got to play happy family with your new kids. The only thing you didn't count on was Grandmother Eleanor seeing through your act. We raised you. Rachel said desperately. "We fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof over your head. Doesn't that count for something?" "You did the bare minimum required by law," I replied, "and you made sure I knew every single day that I was unwanted." I looked around at the people who had shaped my childhood, who had made me feel worthless, who had convinced me I was lucky they tolerated my existence. "The truck," I said to my father, "the kitchen renovation, Logan's boat, Vanessa's car. How much did you spend thinking you'd inherit grandmother's money?" My father couldn't meet my eyes. "About $200,000, Rachel whispered. "Well," I said, standing, "I guess you'll figure it out. You're good at telling people to figure things out." Margaret and I headed toward the door, but Vanessa's voice stopped us. "Olivia, wait. You're not really going to take everything, are you? I mean, we're still family." I turned back to look at her. Sweet Vanessa, who had never once stood up for me when Rachel was tearing me down. "Family?" I repeated. "You mean like how you included me in family photos? Oh, wait, you didn't. Or like how you invited me to family vacations. Oh, wait, you didn't do that either. Or maybe you mean like how you stood up for me when Rachel told everyone I was adopted. No, you didn't do that either. Huff." "But the money could help all of us," Logan interjected. "You could share it. We could all benefit." "The money is helping all of us," I replied. "It's helping me because I'm the one Grandmother Eleanor wanted to help. You want money? Get jobs, take out loans, figure it out." As we reached the door, Rachel called out one last time. "Olivia, please. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. Doesn't that mean anything?" I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "David is my father," I said quietly. "Jennifer was my mother. You're just the woman who married my dad and spent 21 years making me wish I'd never been born." We left them in their expensive living room, surrounded by all the things they'd bought with money they never actually had, facing the reality that their lies had finally caught up with them. 6 months later, I moved into Grandmother Eleanor's house, just 30 minutes from my old apartment. It's beautiful. 4 bedrooms, a huge kitchen, a garden she maintained herself until the end. I found photos I'd never seen before. Pictures of me as a baby with my real mother, family gatherings where I looked happy and loved, evidence of the life I might have had if Jennifer had lived. I also found more letters from Grandmother Eleanor, written but never sent, documenting years of trying to maintain contact with me, birthday cards she bought but wasn't allowed to give me, Christmas presents that were returned unopened. I finished my degree in business administration with a focus on finance. With my grandmother's money properly invested, I don't have to work, but I do anyway. I started a nonprofit organization that helps kids who age out of foster care, kids who know what it's like to feel unwanted and alone. My father has called me exactly once since that day. He asked if I would consider helping them avoid foreclosure on their house. I told him to contact my lawyer if he wanted to discuss anything financial. The call ended with him apologizing for the first time in my life, but I made it clear that while I acknowledged his apology, our relationship was permanently damaged beyond repair. Rachel sends me Christmas cards every year with notes about family forgiveness and moving forward. I throw them away unopened. She and my father are still married, though I heard through mutual acquaintances that they nearly divorced over the financial stress that followed the will's revelation. Logan lost the boat, couldn't make the payments without the inheritance he was counting on. Vanessa had to get a job to help her parents pay their bills. They learned what I've always known, that money doesn't just appear because you want it to, and that actions have consequences. But the best part isn't the money. As life-changing as it's been, the best part is the truth. For the first time in my life, I know who I really am. I know that I was loved unconditionally by at least one person. I know that my real mother didn't abandon me. She was taken from me. I know that the feeling of never quite belonging wasn't my fault. Sometimes I sit in Grandmother Eleanor's garden, reading her letters and looking through old photo albums, and I feel her presence. I feel the love she wasn't allowed to give me while she was alive, the relationship we were cheated out of by my father's cowardice and Rachel's cruelty. I wish I could thank her in person. I wish I could tell her that her final gift wasn't just the money. It was the truth. And the truth, it turns out, is worth more than $2 million. Though the $2 million doesn't hurt either. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.